Hi, welcome to Psychosynthesis Forum. My name is Lars Gimstedt and I work here as a coach and as a therapist. We offer many different services, both for individuals, couples, groups, and organizations. Look into our web, psychosynthesisforum.com, to get all information about this. In our web shop, there are a large number of products for self-help and personal growth, like ebooks, e-courses, meditations, visualizations, and so on. In this video clip, I will be talking about our e-course Get Unstuck. In certain situations and/or with certain people, we may become blocked. We may, so to say, have our back to the wall, become dumbfounded, unable to handle the situation in a good way. The inner state one ends up in may be dominated by a strong emotion, where one reacts to what's happening by feeling offended, criticized, taken by surprise, upset, frightened, or some other negative emotion like these. In an inner state like this, one usually reacts instead of reflecting and then acting. The reaction is mostly automatic, which reduces one's freedom of action to one option, one's conditioned reaction pattern. This conditioned way of reacting can take various forms for different persons. Becoming paralyzed or not being able to say anything, withdrawing and displaying emotional distance, reacting with anger and with crushing replies, by crying, anxiety, and so on. This inner programming is in most cases not possible to change through mental insights or by promising oneself to react a better way next time. Conditioned, subconscious reaction patterns are examples of automatic behavior and automatic action patterns. But automatic action patterns are basically positive functions. Without these, life would be extremely energy consuming. If you have a driver's license, for example, you probably remember your high level of tension when learning to drive a car, parking in tight spots, observing all road signs, being aware of meeting traffic, and so on. And by now, you have most probably at times experienced driving from point A to point B, and when locking your car, suddenly realizing that you haven't the foggiest idea how you came here. Your subconscious mind drove the car. And it is, furthermore, a good driver. Always stops at red lights, keeps proper distance to other cars, follows speed limits, and so on. We are seldom aware of this type of automatic behavior, and we don't need to alter these automated patterns of action, as they constitute positive and useful functions. They are always stable, and they're not prone to change when exposed to external or internal factors, which of course is good. Once having learned how to ride a bicycle, you will always remember it, even after long periods of not doing it. But when automatic and subconscious patterns of action have negative outcomes, we benefit from altering them. The problem is, although, that these patterns are automatic, and they are therefore very difficult to change through conscious mental processes and insights. A slideshow that now will follow will illustrate the psychological mechanism for negative automatic action patterns. The mechanism can be described as a vicious circle, which I will describe step for step. The course Get Unstuck will lead you through a number of steps through which you can become aware of what is happening on a subconscious level, and so that you can analyze how your own subconscious conditioned reflex works. The model that will be described in this slideshow I have called the blocking vortex. The blocking vortex is typically activated by something that can be called the experience of threat, which comes from something specific in the situation. But this experience does first not reach the conscious mind. Rather, an external or internal image triggers via a neurological direct connection those parts of the brain having the specific function to get us to react immediately and by instinct to threats, amygdala and hippocampus in the rearmost part of the brain just above the spinal cord. Phase 1. Through a subconsciously learned programming, a conditioned reflex now occurs with the physiological body state as the first result. This can be a tension in the shoulders or in the stomach region. It can be a quick inhale and holding the breath. It can be a contraction of the surface blood vessels in the skin, or something similar. This happens rapidly and takes between a hundredth and a tenth of a second, and the cognitive functions of the brain's frontal lobes have not even started to work. No conscious thoughts or emotions have at this stage been registered. Phase 2. After another 1 to 2 seconds, the cognitive functions start to become active, and they now interpret the physiological state. Note, the interpretation is not done of what is happening externally. It is based entirely on the physiological body state. As this interpretation is made of a conditioned reflex of the body, in most cases an over-interpretation is now made, or a completely erroneous one. Phase 3. After 5 to 10 seconds cognitive processing, the brain now activates the body and action starts. Through both learned behavior and genetic inheritance, this enactment is based on the so-called protective mechanisms: flee, freeze, or attack. Most animals act instinctively in one or more of these ways. The purpose of the enactment is to avert the threat, and it is therefore called the avoidance behavior. The avoidance behavior, which almost always is the result of a subconscious interpretation, is also characterized by being a conditioned reflex and can be either destructive, compulsory aggression, or self-destructive or self-limiting. As the real cause of the avoidance behavior is not consciously recognized, it leads to that the experience of the threat increases, which in its turn leads to that the physiological reaction increases, which in its turn leads to that the excessive or erroneous interpretation increases, which in its turn reinforces the avoidance behavior, which, and so on and so on, in an emotional vortex spinning quicker and quicker. which soon, in seconds, leads to an emotionally stuck state. In extreme cases, this can lead to, for example, panic disorder, phobia, social phobia, traumatic flashback, compulsory aggression, speech blockage and stuttering, etc. But the most common outcome of the blocking vortex is becoming paralyzed and dumbfounded. It is possible to learn how to interrupt this self-amplifying inner process. Using cognitive methods, for example CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, one can learn to interpret situations in a more realistic way so that the phase 2 part of the blocking vortex is improved. With behavior therapy, one can change phase 3, learning better ways of acting over time. These methods are, although not very efficient, and require in most cases considerable investment in time and effort. But it is possible to interrupt the blocking vortex already at phase 1, which implies changing the basic conditioned reflex. This can be done through a reprogramming of the subconscious script controlling the reactive behavioral pattern. This is a both faster and more efficient method. Once having reprogrammed the basic conditioned reflex, one will never activate the blocking vortex again, no matter how a situation develops. The course Get Unstuck teaches you to reprogram your subconscious mind so that you stop an emotional blocking automatically, and so that you act in a constructive way. If you are watching this video at YouTube, go to psychosynthesisforum.com to read more about the course Get Unstuck. If you're watching this video inside the e-course, good luck with going through the course. In both cases, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to mail us.